After the SATs, I transferred my legal residency back to my adoptive mom's house. The moment the SATs were over, my parents took their precious adopted daughter and my brother on vacation. While they were gone, I took my ID and the family's residency documents to the city records office and had my legal address officially moved back to my adoptive mom's place. When the scores were released, reporters came to interview my parents. "How did you raise the state's top scorer?" they asked. I just smiled and pointed to the woman beside me, my adoptive mom. "This is my real mother." I walked out of the exam room after finishing the last test. A huge crowd of parents was waiting at the school gate. I took my time leaving the classroom and spotted Isabelle running into my parents' arms, acting all cutesy before hopping into their luxury car and speeding off. Before getting in, Isabelle subtly glanced around. When she finally saw me, a smug, challenging smile spread across her face. Alex ran up to me. "Want to grab a bite?" I turned on my phone as I walked. There were several concerned messages from my adoptive mom, Aunt Lucy. I smiled, texted her back, and put my phone away. "No thanks. If I don't go home, their little family vacation won't be starting anytime soon." The Evanses, my parents and brother, had been planning this for 3 months. A big trip with Isabelle to celebrate the end of exams. After all, she had passed the entrance exams for several great art schools, including a top-tier one like RISD. Alex licked his lips, clenching his fists with a hint of nervousness in his eyes. "All right, warrior. You remember what you promised me, right?" I could feel my face flush, blaming it on the heat. "I know, boyfriend. No dating in high school." I'd promised him that once the SATs were over, I'd be his girlfriend. We were barely out of the exam hall, and he was already eager to make it official. Alex let out a long breath, said, "I'll pick you up tonight," and then took off like a bat out of hell. When I got home, Isabelle was already in a brand new outfit, bustling around the house. The air was practically buzzing with her vibrant energy. "We have to bring sunscreen. Mom, you're too pretty to get a tan. And this book, it's Ethan's favorite. Oh, and this tea, it's Dad's favorite." Isabelle always used that sweet, delicate voice, attending to every little detail to win them over. Not like me, clumsy and unable to say a nice word to save my life. "Hannah, you're back. How were the tests?" Unsurprisingly, Isabelle was the first to notice me. The lively atmosphere instantly cooled the moment I appeared. "TCH, why even ask? She's always at the bottom of the class," Ethan sneered. We were both slackers, but Ethan, who was consistently in the bottom 20 of his class, always felt superior to me, the girl who was consistently dead last in mine. Even though he was in middle school and I was in high school. "While we're gone, you stay home and work on your English. I'm already making arrangements for you to go abroad. You'll go to college there, get some credentials, and when you come back, I can arrange a good marriage for you," my father said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Hannah, can't you try a little harder? You're my daughter after all." "Don't be so useless," my mother added, her social climbing disappointment palpable. "I know." I stood there, emotionless, listening to them lecture me. "Our flight is tonight. Don't go out and cause trouble while we're away. You'll just embarrass me," my father commanded. "Have a great trip," I said calmly, offering my blessing. But it was obvious they couldn't stand my indifferent attitude. In their eyes, I was just wallowing in my own failure, having already given up. "I'll have the housekeeper keep an eye on you. You're not to leave the house. With grades like yours, you're an embarrassment just by being seen outside." I know. Whatever my father said, I just lowered my head and agreed. He kept nagging until they absolutely had to leave, finally letting out a cold snort. A month-long vacation. I hope they have a wonderful time, especially after the exam scores are released. After they left, the housekeeper looked at me with a smug, arrogant air. "I'll be contacting an English tutor to start tomorrow. Don't you go running off." I gave him one cold look, turned without a word, and went back to my room. My icy stare seemed to startle him. After I shut my door, I could hear him muttering and complaining out in the hall. I pulled out my backpack and started packing. I had already secretly snagged the residency documents yesterday. As I packed, I only took the notebook, water bottle, and bank card I had with me when I first came to the Evans house. I didn't take anything else. Every single thing in this room carried the scent of this family. It made me feel a deep, baseless loathing. But just leaving like this felt unsatisfying. Sure, I had been acting for the past 3 years because of the money, but I had also put up with a lot of crap. After thinking for a moment, I started smashing everything I could get my hands on. Clothes bags, I sliced them up with a utility knife. Half an hour later, the room was a complete wreck. It looked so much better. Then, feeling much lighter, I slung my cheap backpack over my shoulder and left. Someone's in a good mood. Just as I stepped out of the gated community, I saw someone in full black motorcycle gear, striking a pose against a Harley. And that Harley was pink. So very, very pink. I had to suppress a laugh so hard it almost hurt. What is this? My dad said girls like cool guys, and my mom said girls like pink, bubbly things. I figured they were both right. I couldn't bear to crush the anxious look in the eyes of a love-struck, clueless boy, so I practically gave him a standing ovation. They were totally right. I love it. I refused to admit it was the little devil on my shoulder talking. Where to? Alex blushed, his eyes sparkling. Let's find a hotel for tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to the records office, and after I get my address transferred, I'm heading straight to the train station. I want to go back to City A. I hadn't been home to City A in 3 years. Even my video calls with Aunt Lucy had to be done in secret. Now that I was free, I wished I could just grow wings and fly back. If only I had one of Doraemon's magic doors to get there instantly. The next day, I went to the records office to change my residency. Since I had all the paperwork ready, it went smoothly. Now all I had to do was wait for the official confirmation. I asked Alex to take me to the train station. He was clearly bummed out but tried to act mature about it. How long will you be gone? We had just made our relationship official, and now, not even a week later, we were going to be in different cities. Alex took my backpack and put it in the basket on the front of his motorcycle. He stared at the ground, kicking a small stone with his foot. Want to come with me? The invitation slipped out before I could stop it. I was as surprised as he was that I'd said it. But I didn't regret it. A triumphant, smug look appeared on Alex's face. Yes. As if afraid I'd change my mind, Alex helped me onto the pink Harley, took my hands, and wrapped them tightly around his waist. With a whoosh, we sped off toward the train station. Last night it was too dark for people to see, but now it was broad daylight. The combination of black leather and bright pink turned a lot of heads. I buried my face in Alex's back, suddenly feeling embarrassed. Thank God for helmets. And thank God the Harley was fast. Back in City A, my adoptive mom, Aunt Lucy, was overjoyed. When I was forced to go back to the Evans family, she was happy for me but also felt guilty. I kept telling her I was doing fine, but she had raised me for over a decade. She saw right through my lies, but could only worry from afar. When she found out I was transferring my legal address back, she was as happy as a kid. When I left the Evans house, I turned off my phone and got a new number. So I had no idea that when the housekeeper couldn't find me the next day, he tattled to my father. He immediately tried calling me, but of course, there was no answer, which only made him angrier. The 4 of them, my father, mother, Isabelle, and Ethan, were on their vacation, but my rebellion cast a shadow over their trip, leaving a sour taste in their mouths. With Alex's help, the residency transfer, which should have taken a week, was completed in 2 days. I stayed in City A with my adoptive mom, enjoying the peace and quiet until the exam scores were released. On the day the scores came out, Alex and I went hiking early in the morning. We didn't even remember to check the results until we got home that evening. I entered my ID number. Logged in. Total score, 712. When the score popped up, Alex, who was right next to me, glanced at his phone and then gave me a strange look. What's wrong? The school just sent out a notification. The top scorer in our state got a 712. Oh really? What did that have to do with me? It didn't click at first. I was just thinking that my score was a little better than I'd expected. My younger adoptive brother jumped up and hugged me. Sis, you're the top scorer in the state? You're amazing. That's my sister. The words finally hit me, and I stood there stunned. I had accidentally become the state's top student. I had only planned on giving the Evans family a little shock when the scores came out. But becoming the top scorer in the entire state? That was going to be so much better. I turned on the phone I had kept off for over 2 weeks. As soon as it booted up, a flood of messages and notifications poured in. My phone started buzzing nonstop. One familiar number appeared with startling frequency. He had called 3 or 4 times in the 2 days before I turned it off, and today alone he called more than a dozen times. And there it was, calling again. I decisively rejected the call. And again. A smile played on my lips. Mom, I need to go back to City B tomorrow. I still haven't picked up my high school diploma, and there's a lot I need to take care of. I'll come back as soon as I'm done. Will there be trouble? Mom asked, her eyes full of worry. I flashed a confident smile. Don't worry. If there's trouble, it won't be for me. Mom looked at me. Okay. No matter what happens, Mom is here for you. Since they didn't treat you well, they can't just snatch you away from me again. No matter what, you'll always be my precious daughter. I held my head high like a proud peacock. Of course. When I got back to City B, I didn't go to the Evans house. I went straight to the school. The teachers and students already knew I was coming back today, thanks to Alex. The second I arrived at the school gate, I saw a massive crowd of people, including a lot of reporters. And of course, my dear biological family. Looks of shock, disbelief, and jealousy washed over me, and I accepted them all with pleasure. The huge crowd was silent. After all, it's pretty hard to believe that the girl who was always last in her class suddenly scored the highest. Hannah, cheating on the SATs is a criminal offense, Isabelle said, her eyes wide with fake concern. Isabelle, slander is also a criminal offense. It costs nothing to make a baseless accusation, does it? Enough. Whatever methods you use to get this score, you should go turn yourself in, my father said, declaring my guilt on the spot. I was originally thinking of handling this privately, but if this is how they wanted to play it, I wouldn't bother saving them any face. You need evidence for accusations. You're claiming I cheated my way to the top without a shred of proof. How good would I have to be to cheat my way into first place? Just because my grades in high school were bad, you automatically assume I couldn't possibly do well on the SATs? I looked at the Evans family with a smirk. Just then, a reporter held out a microphone. Can you tell us how you went from last place to the top scorer in the state? Could you share some of your study tips? Of course. The tip is to work hard consistently. You can't just cram at the last minute. As for my grades in high school, well, that's because certain people didn't think I deserved good grades, so I deliberately got the answers wrong. If you don't believe me, you can go check my old test papers. 4 multiple choice questions. I always chose the answer next to the correct one. 4 multiple response questions. I picked all the wrong answers. As for the other questions, I only answered one. And for the rest, I only wrote down the final result without showing my work. Teachers, the school should have records of the final exams, right? If you're suspicious, feel free to go and check. When I said that, everyone looked like they'd been struck by lightning, too stunned to speak. Until someone in the crowd shouted, I remember now. Weren't you the first place winner of the City A junior high physics competition? I had participated in it back in 8th grade. It was a citywide physics competition in City A. That one got me a guaranteed spot in City A's top high school. But then, for various reasons, I ended up in City B. The school administration saw that the situation was getting chaotic. With the media demanding to see my old test papers, they decided to lead everyone to a conference room. My father wanted to take me home with them, but I refused. I asked a teacher to let us use an empty classroom. I told Alex to wait for me outside the door. Then, I sat in the empty classroom with the Evans family. So you were this smart all along? You spent the last 3 years doing this on purpose. Just to embarrass our family? My father accused, ever the one to shift blame. After I transferred, I got 3rd place on my first physics quiz. You accused me of cheating. I told you I didn't, but you didn't believe me. Then Isabelle added fuel to the fire, saying the top-scoring student sat right in front of me during the test. That convinced you I must have cheated to get 3rd place. Isabelle stood behind her father, looking wronged, tears welling up in her red-rimmed eyes. Isabelle knew her strengths. Whenever this happened, All she had to do was put on that expression. Everyone would immediately think someone else was at fault, that she was the one being wronged. So pitiful, it could melt a heart of stone. Just like now. Ethan yelled at me. My sister never said your name. You were the one with a guilty conscience. I laughed softly and stepped closer to him. Have you forgotten? You were the one shouting the loudest that I cheated. You had just gotten caught cheating on your midterms. And to distract everyone, you threw me under the bus. Then you paid someone off to make your cheating problem quietly disappear. Ethan stumbled back, terrified. How did you know that? And later, when my grades were terrible, you all looked at me with that "this is how it should be" expression. I turned to my father. So, I was just living up to your expectations. My father's face darkened as he growled through clenched teeth. Enough. Let's let the past be the past. You did a good job getting the top score in the state. We'll throw a party tomorrow to celebrate. And we'll finally announce your identity. For the past 3 years, we didn't want to distract you from your studies, so we never had a chance to formally introduce you. Such a businessman, a true old fox. He planned to just brush everything under the rug so easily. With this score, you can get into any university in the country. The key is to pick a good major so you can find a husband from a matching social class. He was trying to stay composed, but the smug, calculating smile on his face became more and more apparent. Before he could finish, I cut him off. Mr. Evans. He didn't look happy about being interrupted. But considering my outstanding scores, he maintained his fake smile. There's something you might not be aware of. The day you left for your trip, I had my legal residency transferred out of your house. So legally speaking, I have no relationship with you anymore. And of course, me becoming the state's top scorer has nothing to do with you, either. What did you say? My father's face was ashen. Mr. Evans, you must be getting old. Your hearing isn't what it used to be. Isabelle, why don't you repeat it for him? I wasn't going to put up with his act of playing deaf. Hannah, how could you do that? You're being so ungrateful. Hannah, do you realize what you're giving up by doing this? Mr. Evans really had some nerve, acting like his family was some grand prize. Giving up? If you hadn't forced me to come back to the Evans house, would I have had to be separated from my mother for 3 years? What nonsense are you talking about? I'm your mother. How did you get so brainwashed by that awful woman? I could tolerate them insulting me. I didn't care what they thought, but I couldn't stand them calling my mom an awful woman. Shut up. What gives you the right to talk about my mom? You never raised me, never taught me anything. You only ever looked down on me. What makes you think you're qualified to be my mother? My tone was so fierce that my biological mother couldn't believe I was yelling at her for another woman. Her face crumpled. Even if you wanted to rebel, 3 years is enough. Find some time tomorrow and transfer your residency back. My father was still the same. Arrogant and incapable of listening to reason. You said that if I came with you, you would give my mom $60,000 for her medical bills. So I was just an actress you hired for 3 years for $60,000 to provide you with emotional validation. Now the contract is over, and I have no intention of renewing it. So face reality. Don't come looking for me anymore. I can't be bothered to deal with you. When I was born, someone switched me with their daughter. That family treated me poorly. When I was 5, my adoptive mom, who was my biological mother's younger sister, couldn't stand it anymore and offered to adopt me. That's how I escaped a life of beatings and neglect. Karma caught up with them. The family died in a car accident when I was 10. My biological parents found me when I was in the hospital. My adoptive mom was sick. I was exhausted from worrying about her. I looked haggard. I stood up to get a basin of warm water to give her a sponge bath. My hands were unsteady, and the porcelain basin slipped, crashing to the floor with a piercing sound. That was the exact moment they walked in. They immediately assumed I was being abused at my adoptive mom's house. No matter how I explained, they wouldn't believe me. From the moment she saw me in the hospital, my biological mother started sobbing. You've suffered so much all these years. When you come home, Mommy will make up for everything. Her eyes were red, and tears streamed down her face. It reminded me of the matriarchs in historical dramas, who looked beautiful even when they were heartbroken. She stood before me while my father silently patted her shoulder to comfort her. I handed her a tissue. She took one and gently dabbed her tears. But neither of them made a move to hug me. In that moment, I actually felt a sense of relief. I thought maybe they weren't planning on taking me home, which was exactly what I wanted. But when I refused to go with them, they tried every trick in the book to get me to go back with them. At the time, my mom needed a lot of money for surgery. Our savings weren't enough, and we were planning to sell our house. When they found out, they offered to give us $60,000 on the condition that I go home with them. I agreed. On the car ride back to the Evans house, my biological mother eagerly told me about the family. An older brother who was already married and didn't live at home often. A younger brother still in elementary school, who was very excited to meet his long-lost sister. And another sister. When she mentioned this sister, her words became vague and tinged with guilt. What was there to be guilty about? Wasn't it just the girl who was switched at birth? She was pampered and spoiled in the Evans home. And I was doing just fine at my adoptive mom's house. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. They wouldn't want to hear what I really thought, so they wouldn't believe me anyway. My silence seemed to make my biological mother think I had a problem with the adopted daughter. She frantically tried to explain how obedient and understanding she was, and that I would definitely get along with her. My biological mother talked until her throat was dry, looking at me with bright, expectant eyes. I suppressed my own anxiety and said coolly, "I know." Then my biological mother looked disappointed. At the time, I didn't understand what she was disappointed about. I later realized she was disappointed that she didn't see the timid, cautious, yet happy and grateful reaction she had expected. When we got home, that girl, Isabelle, greeted me with a warm hug. My older brother was gentle but distant. My younger brother's face was filled with undisguised contempt. If my father hadn't shot him a glare, my little brother probably would have tried to sweep me out the door with a broom. I was old enough to understand things when my adoptive mom took me in. I knew she wasn't my real mom. My birth mother was her older sister. It wasn't until I started middle school that my adoptive mom told me the truth. She asked me then if I wanted to find my birth mother, and that she would help me. I hugged her and said I do. But maybe after high school. And no matter if I find her or not, you'll always be my mom. Unless you don't want me as your daughter anymore. My adoptive mom cried and laughed at the same time. You little heartbreaker. How could I ever not want you? So, when they appeared before me, saying they were my biological parents, I wasn't entirely without happiness. I had fantasized that they treated me this way because they cared about their daughter who was lost at birth. I had fantasized that once the misunderstandings were cleared up, I would have two homes, two mothers who cherished me. When I first walked into the Evans house, I did have a sliver of hope. After I aced that first physics quiz, I was happy on my way home. And my disappointment when they misunderstood was just as great as my initial happiness. Later, I slowly came to understand that they never wanted their lost daughter back. They wanted a poor wretch who would be dependent on them. Someone timid and weak, but also obedient. And so, I stopped expecting anything from them. I'll never forget the time they accused me of cheating, and Ethan grabbed my backpack and dumped all my books on the floor. I'll never forget when Isabelle instigated others to bully me at school, cornering me in the girls' bathroom. I fought them like my life depended on it and ended up in the hospital, bruised and swollen, while my father and mother only complained about how I had embarrassed them. It was thanks to Alex that no one dared to bully me at school after that. And the time Isabelle fell down the stairs, and my father slapped me without asking a single question. Even when I insisted on seeing the security footage to prove my innocence, and Isabelle meekly admitted the truth, these parents and my so-called brother just said I had a vicious heart. After leaving the classroom, several media outlets wanted to interview me. I ended up choosing the reporter from the outlet that had recognized me from the physics competition. The reporter hesitantly suggested that I could bring my parents along for the interview. My father immediately started to step forward. I said apologetically, "My mother is in City A. If you want to interview my parents, you might have to wait a few days. She's not coming to City B until the day after tomorrow." Being publicly disowned like that, my father was furious. "You ungrateful brat." Isabelle, having composed herself, added fuel to the fire. "Sister, if you say that, you'll hurt Mom and Dad's feelings. You're still their biological daughter, related by blood. Blood is thicker than water. Blood relation? Didn't you bring me back just to use me for an arranged marriage? Forbidding me from getting good grades, so I could only be your foil? Shocked that I would just make things up on the spot, Isabelle's train of thought was completely derailed. Now that the SATs are over, Mr. Evans was planning to send me abroad, telling me to get a diploma and come back for an arranged marriage. I'm not a puppet on a string, I'm a person with my own will. For the 3 years they've had me back, they've only wanted to use me. Only my adoptive mother truly cares for me and loves me. She is my only family. I shouted my piece. The reporters around us immediately started recording and snapping photos. Alex stepped forward at the perfect moment and pulled me into his arms. Ms. Evans is not feeling well right now. We can schedule the interview for a later time. Then he quickly whisked me away. It wasn't until we were in the car that I wriggled out of his embrace. I was suffocating in there. Seeing that I was completely calm and showed no signs of distress, Alex realized I had been putting on an act. He smiled and tapped my head. You're a pretty good actress. Honestly, I never wanted to target Isabelle. Being suddenly told she was the fake heiress must have left her terrified and insecure. She could be abandoned by this materialistic couple at any moment. In that sense, she was more pitiful than I was. But while she was panicking about her identity, she was also convinced that I was filled with resentment and jealousy. If she had merely been showing off her wealthy lifestyle, I could have ignored it. But she was constantly trying to cause trouble for me, framing me, slandering me, and even trying to hurt me. That was something I absolutely could not tolerate. So, right after Isabelle accused me of cheating on the SATs, news broke that she had cheated during her entrance exam for the prestigious Art Academy. The evidence was irrefutable. Even though her academic scores were high enough, and she had passed the art exams for several impressive schools, not a single one dared to accept her. I heard that my father spent a fortune trying to suppress the scandal, but with little success. It was, as my father often said, a complete embarrassment. For someone as obsessed with his image as my father, to be publicly shamed by both his biological daughter and his adopted one, was a double blow. I thought he would be too ashamed to show his face for a while, but I had greatly underestimated the thickness of his skin and the resilience of a businessman. He somehow found out that Alex and I were dating. He appeared before me again, shameless and wearing a pleased expression. When it comes to wealth, Alex's family was leagues above the Evans family. It seemed he also knew that Alex and I were on good terms in high school. He just hadn't known the extent of it, thanks to Isabelle's deliberate concealment. If Alex hadn't protected me in high school, preventing anyone from openly bullying me, the last 3 years with the Evans family would not have been so quiet. I would have turned their world upside down long ago. My father put on his fake smile. Alex, is it? I saw you at the Chew Corporation's annual gala years ago. You were only in middle school then. Look how you've grown. You and Hannah should come over for dinner sometime. Alex knew how much I despised this family and didn't pull any punches. Last week, I already went home with Hannah. Aunt Lucy is a great cook. With that, he pulled me onto his pink Harley and snapped my helmet into place. He didn't even glance at my father's clenched jaw and furious expression. We sped off, leaving him in a cloud of exhaust fumes. The next day, my father appeared before me again. Alex wasn't with me. He chose his words carefully. It's true that I've neglected you in the past. But do you really think you can have a good life after leaving the Evans family? Let's not talk about anything else, just the Chew family. What kind of family do you think they are? Your adoptive mother's family is barely middle class. Do you think someone with your background can marry into the Chew family? You haven't experienced the harsh realities of the world yet. Society is very realistic. Even for the sake of your own future happiness, you shouldn't be on such bad terms with us. He just kept showing up, again and again. It was impossible to avoid him. Remembering what Alex told me yesterday, I decided to go for the jugular. I heard the Evans Corporation is having some financial difficulties lately. With my current social influence, what do you think would happen to your company if I said a few things to a reporter? Or maybe I could whisper a few things in Alex's ear. I wonder what kind of impact that would have on your company. Whether that impact would be good or bad was left unsaid. Mr. Evans, stop coming to find me. All I want is to cut ties with you. But if you keep showing up, I can't guarantee I won't kick you while you're down. Seeing that the soft approach wasn't working, my father switched to threats. Isabelle said she didn't originally plan to cheat, that you were the one who encouraged her. If Alex finds out what a malicious person you are, do you think you two will still have a future? He wasn't wrong. I had subtly mentioned to Isabelle that bribery was an option. I knew better than anyone how desperately Isabelle wanted to get into that top art school. But how could I possibly admit to that? Mr. Evans, what are you talking about? You need evidence for everything. It was clearly Isabelle who had her own crooked ideas, and she just happened to be seen and photographed by a reporter from Fonghua News. Fonghua was a company under Alex's family's umbrella. Regardless, I am grateful to you. Even though your intentions weren't pure, it was because of your help that my mom had the money for her surgery. My mom and brother have lived comfortably these past few years thanks to the money you gave us. So, I really don't want to burn everything to the ground. Isabelle got what she deserved. I just want to go back to my old life. If you don't bother me, I won't do anything drastic. My father seemed to be genuinely shaken this time. He didn't come looking for me again, not even when college started. Alex notified me to go back to school to pick up our diplomas. The school's leadership hoped I would take a picture to be displayed on the honor roll bulletin board. I didn't refuse. While taking photos, students I barely knew or didn't know at all came up to take pictures with me. Isabelle stood to the side, watching me with a sinister glare. She looked gaunt and withered. It had only been a few days. I flashed her a smile, showing all 8 of my pearly white teeth. Are you satisfied now, Hannah? You're happy now that you've ruined me? Isabelle looked so pitiful. Why should I be happy? Don't think so highly of yourself. Frankly, whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. Why would it be worth my happiness or unhappiness? Everything you're going through now is your own doing. You're smart enough to understand that. But if you want to force the blame onto me, you'll have to see if you have what it takes. After all, I know your dirty little secrets better than anyone. Isabelle stumbled backward in fear. I checked the time. It was almost noon. I had plans to meet my mom and brother for a celebratory lunch. I declined the school leadership's invitation, and Alex and I left with our diplomas. As we neared the school gate, I saw my mom and brother talking under the hot sun. I quickened my pace, my voice tinged with reproach. It's so hot out. Didn't I tell you to wait for me at the restaurant? You didn't even bring an umbrella. There's shade right over there. Why aren't you standing in the shade? My mom gave me and Alex a teasing look. You're always saying I'm a nag, but now you sound just like me. My brother clutched his head. It's over, it's over. It used to be just mom nagging. Now it's going to be mom and sis nagging. Double kill. I laughed and playfully punched his arm, getting ready to call a cab. Sis. I turned around. Ethan was standing behind me. I was startled. Did I hear him right? What did he just call me? Was he possessed? Ethan's eyes were dim and full of loss. Mom and Dad want to have a meal with you. I rolled my eyes. No thanks, I'm busy. Don't come looking for me anymore. Let's just go our separate ways and stop making each other miserable. Ethan watched as Hannah turned away without hesitation, laughing and leaving with her adoptive mother and brother. A sharp pain pierced his heart. Hannah never answered their calls. Even when they used different numbers, the moment she heard their voices, she would hang up immediately. His parents wanted to come to the school to confront her in person, but they were afraid of being rejected and humiliated in front of so many people. For reasons he didn't quite understand, Ethan had volunteered to come. Seeing her laughing and joking with her adoptive brother made him burn with jealousy. In 3 years, she had never once looked at him with that kind of affectionate expression. Whenever she looked at him, her eyes were completely blank, as if she were looking at a block of wood. No matter how horrible his words were, she never reacted. Ethan wanted to rush up and ask her why she treated a stranger with no blood relation better than him, her own biological brother, from the same parents. But Ethan also knew he had no right to be jealous. After I started college, my father really didn't come looking for me again. I heard from Alex that they sent Isabelle abroad. She was walking the path they had planned for me. Get a useless degree, and then come back in 4 years for an arranged marriage. 3 years later, my adoptive brother took his college entrance exams. Coincidentally, when the results came out, he was also the state's top scorer. Reporters flocked to interview my brother, and in their investigation, they discovered something. 3 years prior, his sister, me, had also been the state's top scorer. Many people dug up the old news from 3 years ago. The internet was full of praise for my mom's excellent parenting. At the same time, my biological parents were heavily criticized. The funny thing was, the Evans family's business had been doing poorly for the past 2 years, and was just starting to recover. This new wave of public opinion cost them 2 more business partners. The company could only continue to barely hang on. I thought I would never see them again in this lifetime. But then my father showed up again. Somehow, they found out that I was on very good terms with Professor Lee. They hoped I could connect them with him, to persuade him to sell them the rights to a new technology he had just developed. Whether you admit it or not, we are your family. We're connected by blood. Just do us this small favor. It won't require you to do much. I was in a small pavilion on campus, waiting to go back to the lab. The sight of a big-shot CEO in a custom-tailored suit sitting on a simple stone bench was truly out of place. I swatted a bug away from my face. Mr. Evans, are you aware that other companies, richer and more polite than yours, have failed to get their hands on my professor's research? My eyes were filled with contempt. You have no money and no manners. You don't even deserve to meet my professor, let alone get his research. Hannah, don't forget. You are who you are today, because of the excellent genes we provided you. Otherwise, do you think you could have become the state's top scorer, gotten into this university, and earned Professor Lee's appreciation? This man really loved to flatter himself. Genes. That's the biggest joke I've ever heard. Don't give yourself so much credit. My excellence has nothing to do with you. If we're talking about genes, your older son Ian was a decent student, but not exceptional. Ethan is a complete failure when it comes to academics. If we're talking about upbringing, look at what you turned Isabelle into. All she knows is how to cheat. Meanwhile, my brother and I have been top students since we were kids. Whether it's genes or upbringing, my success is thanks to my adoptive mother. But there is one thing I have in common with you Evanses. I'm cold-hearted. Seeing my own biological parents in this state, I feel nothing at all. That coldness must have come from your genes. I don't understand why you keep coming to me. I told you 3 years ago, don't expect to gain anything from me. I don't owe you anything. I stood up and brushed the dust off my clothes. Oh right, I forgot to tell you something. I have recordings of all the verbal abuse from 3 years ago, including our conversation in the classroom that day. I've always believed in being prepared. So, don't try to use family ties to manipulate me through other means, or you'll be the ones who suffer. As he stared at me in disbelief, I slowly walked away. Later, I heard that Isabelle was called back from abroad by my father before she even graduated. She was engaged to some rich playboy. The company finally saw a turnaround. But society develops so quickly, and my father is an arrogant man who only knows how to use connections while being stuck in his ways when it comes to business management. The company would inevitably decline. That turnaround was just a final flicker of life. And it seemed Isabelle wasn't doing too well, either. The man she married was a notorious womanizer. He certainly wasn't going to change his ways after getting married. She spent her days fighting off his various mistresses. But none of that had anything to do with me. After graduating from college, I continued my studies as Professor Lee's graduate student. Then I got my PhD and stayed at the university to teach. I bought a house in the capital. I wanted to ask my mom to come live with me, but she said she was used to living in City A. She refused to move. During holidays, Alex and I would go back to visit her. Oh right. I married Alex the year I graduated from college. His family adores me. For the first 2 years, he started from the bottom at his family's main company in City B. He slowly worked his way up to a management position, and then applied to be the general manager of the branch in the capital, following me like a devoted husband. And I believe that in the future, my life will only get better. Alex's mother came to see me. She sat across from me, her expression serious, frowning from time to time. Alex had told me his family would definitely like me. It seemed his perception of his family was a bit off. She sat there for a long time without saying a word, just sizing me up. Finally, she let out a sigh and started rummaging through her purse. I raised an eyebrow. Was she looking for a checkbook? Instead, she pulled out 2 large folders. I saw the words resume and honors written on them in elegant script. She opened the honors folder first and pulled out a stack of certificates. These are all the awards, competition certificates, and medals Alex has won since he was a child. This kid has always been smart. I was a little confused. Was she trying to prove I wasn't good enough for her son? After reciting the story behind each award like a cherished memory, she opened the other folder, resume, which was filled with photos of Alex. His mom arranged the photos in chronological order. Alex has been handsome since he was a baby, and he's still handsome now. You can tell he has excellent genes. She looked at me eagerly. As a potential partner, he's an excellent choice in terms of both looks and intelligence. Honey, you absolutely can't let him get away. I was struck dumb. She continued her sales pitch, her tone earnest. Really, when you're looking for a partner, you can't just go by looks. What if they're good looking but not smart? And if they're smart but not good looking, that won't work either, since you have to see them every day. It's rare to find someone like Alex who is both good looking and smart. You won't regret having him as a boyfriend. A bolt of lightning struck me, leaving me utterly shell-shocked. Ma'am, Alex and I are already dating. What? She was shocked at first, then looked at me in disbelief. How is that possible? How could a wonderful girl like you fall for a quiet blockhead like Alex? I later found out that Alex had always had a keep-your-distance air about him since he was young, especially towards girls. His entire family thought he was going to be a bachelor for life. When they heard he liked a girl, they decided they had to help him win her over. What if this was his one and only chance? But they never expected Alex to be so quick and efficient, settling his lifelong commitment the moment the SATs were over. Later, they would often sigh and say, "That kid has always been decisive, even in his love life. Excellent, just like a true family member." The end.